The first time Clayton Hayes saw the bruises on the widow's face, he felt the same hot anger he used to feel in war. It rose in his chest fast and sharp, the kind of anger that made a man move before he thought. But that day, he did not move. He sat on his black horse at the edge of town and watched as Sarah Carter stepped out of the general store, trying to hide her pain behind a careful smile. The morning sun lit up the main street of Dusty Creek. Wagons rolled slow through the dirt, kids ran with sticks, and men leaned against posts with tin cups of coffee. It all looked normal, but Clayton could see how people's eyes slid away from Sarah as she passed. No one greeted her. No one helped her with the heavy sack of flour she struggled to lift. The yellow and purple mark on her cheek was not from a fall. He had seen marks like that before. He had made marks like that once, long ago, when he was a different man. Sarah Carter had been a married woman not long ago. Her husband, Luke Carter, died in a bar fight behind the saloon on a stormy night. Folks said lightning lit up the sky while the two men swung fists. Luke fell and never got up. He left behind a small house, a few skinny cows, and a widow who had nowhere else to go. He also left behind two brothers, men who liked to drink early and talk loud, men who spit when they laughed and slammed doors when they came near Sarah's place, men the town did not like but also did not cross. Clayton watched as one of those brothers, Hank Carter, stepped out from the saloon now. Hank saw Sarah in the street. He grinned, cruel and slow. "Hey, Sarah," Hank called. "You forget who carries your bills in this town?" Sarah stiffened. Her hands tightened around the sack of flour. She kept walking, but her steps were small. Clayton's jaw clenched. He had not meant to stop in town that morning. He had only come to get wire for the fences on his big spread north of Dusty Creek. Hayes Ranch covered more land than a man could ride in a day. Folks said Clayton Hayes was the richest rancher in 3 counties. They also said he liked to keep to himself. Hank did not move out of Sarah's way. He stepped right in front of her. She tried to go around him, but he grabbed her arm. The sack of flour slipped from her hands and burst in the dirt, white dust rising around them like smoke. "Look what you did," Hank said. "Can't you do anything right?" "I will pay you back," Sarah said in a low voice. "I just need more time." "You've been saying that for months," Hank snapped. "You think you can live in my brother's house for free?" "It was my house too," she said, but her voice shook. Hank leaned in closer. "Not anymore." Clayton swung down from his horse without even knowing he had made the choice. The town fell quiet. Few men in Dusty Creek wanted trouble with the Carter brothers, but no one wanted trouble with Clayton Hayes either. There was something about him. The way he walked. The way his eyes never looked away once they fixed on something. "Let the lady go," Clayton said. Hank turned, still gripping Sarah's arm. He laughed. "This is none of your business, Hayes. We are just having a talk." Clayton stopped a few feet away. He tilted his hat back and looked straight into Hank's eyes. "She does not look like she wants to talk." Sarah did not lift her head. She stared at the torn sack of flour, her arm trembling in Hank's grip. "You stay out of this," Hank said. "This widow owes us money, rent, food. She would be starving if not for us. She needs to be reminded of that once in a while." Clayton's eyes dropped for a second to Sarah's bruised cheek, then back to Hank. "You can remind her with words," he said, "not with your fists." Hank sneered. "You calling me a liar?" "I am calling you a coward," Clayton said. The word hung in the air like a whip crack. Men who had been pretending not to look now watched with open faces. A dog barked twice, then went silent. Hank dropped Sarah's arm. His hands curled into fists. "You want to say that again?" Clayton did not raise his voice. "A man who hits a woman is a coward. I will say it as many times as you like." Quote. For a second, Clayton thought Hank would swing. His body leaned forward, then stopped. Hank's eyes shifted to the gun at Clayton's hip, worn from use but clean, like a tool that still saw work when needed. "You think you can take in every stray in this town," Hank said. "She is none of your concern." Clayton stepped closer, so close Hank had to tilt his head back a little to hold his gaze. "She is now," he said. Something dark flickered in Hank's eyes, but he backed away. "This isn't over," he muttered. He spat in the dirt near Sarah's feet, then stormed off toward the saloon, his boots kicking up dust. For a moment, no one moved. Then the town slowly began to breathe again. Clayton bent down and picked up what was left of the flour sack. Most of it was ruined. He set the torn bag aside and reached for his wallet. "I will pay for her supplies," he called to the store owner, "and send another sack to her house." The owner nodded fast. "Yes, Mr. Hayes, at once." Clayton turned to Sarah. She finally raised her eyes to his. They were pale green and tired, like fields that had seen too many dry seasons. "You did not have to do that," she said. "Someone had to," he answered. "Can you walk home?" Quote. "I always do," she said. She tried to smile, but it did not reach her eyes. He walked beside her as she left the main street. People watched them go. Some whispered. Some shook their heads. No one stepped forward to help. Dusty Creek faded behind them. Ahead, the road out of town stretched long and empty. The land around was flat and dry, with low bushes and a few twisted trees reaching for the sky. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of dust and faraway rain that might never come. "What they said back there," Clayton asked after a while. "Is it true? Do they come to your place often?" Sarah kept her eyes on the road. "They come when they want. They drink, they shout, they say the house is theirs. They say I owe them rent for breathing their air. Sometimes they are calm, sometimes they are not." "Sometimes they hit you," Clayton said quietly. She did not answer. Her silence was an answer on its own. Clayton's hands tightened at his sides. Old memories stirred. A cold night. A younger version of himself. A woman crying. His own voice, raised and sharp. A fist he could not take back once it had flown. He had spent years trying to pay for that night. Years sending money. Years working harder than any man he knew. It had never felt like enough. "Why do you not leave?" he asked. "Go where?" she said. "My parents are gone. I have no brothers, no sisters. That house is all I have left of Luke. If I leave, I have nothing." They reached a small, crooked gate. Beyond it stood a tired-looking house with peeling paint and a roof that sagged in the middle. A thin line of smoke rose from the chimney. One skinny cow grazed in a fenced patch of dry grass. "This is it," she said. She put her hand on the gate, then stopped and turned to him. "Thank you for stepping in back there. But Hank is right. This is not your fight." Clayton looked at the house. He looked at the marks on her face. He looked at the empty land around them, and at the sky that held no promise of rain. He had come to town for fence wire. He had never planned on getting involved. But now, standing at her gate, he felt something click into place inside him, as if the path of his life had just turned in a new direction. He met her eyes. "Maybe it is my fight," he said. Before she could answer, both of them heard the sound in the distance. Hoofbeats. More than one horse, moving fast on the hard ground. Sarah's face went pale. "They are coming," she whispered. Clayton turned toward the sound. On the far rise, 3 riders appeared, dark against the hot white sky, galloping straight toward the widow's house. The 3 riders thundered closer, dust rising around them like a low brown cloud. Clayton stepped in front of the gate without thinking. Sarah froze at his side, her hands still on the crooked wood. As the riders came into view, Clayton saw Hank Carter in the lead. Beside him rode his younger brother Jesse, thin and nervous, and a third man Clayton did not know, with a scar along his jaw and mean eyes. All 3 had bottles tied to their saddles. It was not yet noon. Hank pulled up hard, his horse tossing its head. "Well now," he said, looking from Sarah to Clayton. "I wondered why you left town so quick, Hayes. Did not think it was because you had business out here." "This is my home," Sarah said. "You have no right to ride up like this." Hank ignored her. His eyes stayed on Clayton. "You know you made a mistake this morning," he said, "calling me a coward in front of everyone." Clayton kept his hands loose at his sides. "I only spoke the truth." Jesse shifted in his saddle, looking uneasy. "Hank, maybe we should talk later," he muttered. Hank shot him a glare. "You shut up." He pointed at the house with his chin. "My brother built that place with his own 2 hands. When he died, that makes it ours. This widow is living here on our land, with our cows, eating our food. She pays what she owes, or she gets out." "I told you," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "I have been trying. Work is hard to find. I sew when I can. I clean when I can. I am doing my best." "Your best is not good enough," Hank snapped. He swung his leg over and dropped to the ground, walking toward the gate. His boots crunched on dry dirt. Clayton took a slow step forward. "She owes you?" he asked. "How much?" Quote. Hank stopped and looked him up and down. "Why?" "Because if this is about money, we can settle it with money," Clayton said. "You tell me what you want, right now." Hank smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Well now, I did not know the great Clayton Hayes was so interested in poor little Sarah Carter." Jesse let out a short laugh, then shut his mouth when Clayton's eyes flicked his way. "How much?" Clayton repeated. Hank named a sum far higher than any rent in Dusty Creek. Sarah gasped. She turned toward him. "You know I never owed you that much," she said. "Luke left this house to me. You are lying." Hank did not even look at her. He kept his eyes on Clayton. "She says I am lying," he said. "You calling me a liar now, too?" Quote. Clayton knew if he argued numbers, they would go in circles. This was not about rent. This was about control, about power, and about the fact that no one in town had ever stood up to these men. He reached into his coat and pulled out a leather wallet. Without breaking eye contact, he counted out bills. The wind tugged at the edges of the money, trying to steal it away, but his fingers stayed firm. When he had more than enough in his hand, he held it out. "This should cover what she owes," he said, "and any rent you think you are due. After this, you do not come here again." Hank stared at the money, then at Clayton. Slowly, he reached out and took it. The bills vanished into his pocket. For a moment, the air felt lighter. Then Hank stepped closer, his face near Clayton's. "You think you can buy everything, Hayes?" he asked. His breath smelled of whiskey. "You think you can wave money around and own the whole world? You may have land, but you do not get to tell me where I can ride, or who I can visit." "I just did," Clayton said. Something sharp passed through Hank's eyes. He lifted his hand as if to strike, but Clayton's arm shot up faster. He caught Hank's wrist in a grip of iron. "You touch me," Clayton said quietly, "and this turns into something you do not want." Jesse's hand went to his gun. The third man moved as well. Sarah let out a small cry. For a second, it seemed like the world held its breath. Clayton let go of Hank's wrist and stepped back, giving them space. "You have your money," he said. "Take it and ride." Jesse hesitated. He was watching Clayton like a man who had seen a wild animal and was not sure if it would attack. The third man's fingers twitched near his holster. Hank laughed suddenly, though his eyes were hard. "All right," he said. "All right, Hayes. You won this round." He turned to Sarah. "You hear that, widow? Your new friend just bought you a little time." Quote. He pointed a finger at her chest. "But you remember this, you are alone. One day he will ride back to his big ranch and forget all about you. And when he does, we will be back. And then we will not be so nice." He swung into the saddle and jerked his horse's head around. The 3 men rode off in a storm of dust and bitter laughter. Sarah let go of the breath she had been holding. Her knees almost buckled. Clayton reached out without thinking and steadied her elbow. "You should come stay at my ranch for a while," he said, "at least until this settles." She pulled away from his hand. "I cannot," she said. "People already talk. They will say worse if I go out there alone." "Let them talk," he answered. "Talk does not break bones." She shook her head. "You do not understand. In a place like this, a woman's name is all she has. I lost my husband. I will not lose what is left of my dignity." Clayton looked at the small house, the thin cow, the empty road. "You cannot stay here with no one to protect you," he said. "I have gotten by so far," she said. "I will keep going." Her voice was steady, but he saw the fear in her eyes, buried deep like a coal that would not go out. He stayed a while longer, fixing a loose hinge on her door, checking the lock on her small back window. He walked the fence line, seeing where it sagged. His hands moved with the easy skill of a man used to working with wood and wire. When he finally mounted his horse to leave, the sun was lower in the sky. Sarah stood at the gate, her hands folded in front of her. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," she said, "for what you did today." He looked down at her. "Clayton," he said, "if I am going to make enemies for you, you better call me by my name." A tiny smile touched her lips. "Thank you, Clayton," she said. He nodded once and rode away, but his mind did not leave the widow's house. The image of her standing alone by that crooked gate burned in his thoughts all the way back to Hayes Ranch. That night, as the hands ate stew in the long bunkhouse and the stars came out over the open land, Clayton sat alone on his porch. He poured himself a small drink and did not touch it. He was thinking of Hank's words. "One day he will ride back to his big ranch and forget all about you." Clayton knew he could not forget. He knew the Carters would be back. Men like that did not quit when they felt their pride wounded. They would lick their wounds, drink more, and plan. They would come again, maybe at night, maybe when Sarah was alone. Clayton had seen what happened to unprotected women on the edge of wild land. He had seen it in other towns in other years. He had been part of the worst night of one woman's life. That shame lived in him like a scar no one could see. He stood suddenly, as if a choice had just settled into place. He did not know yet how the town would talk. He did not know how Sarah would look at him when he said the words he was thinking. All he knew was this: money would not be enough. Warnings would not be enough. If he wanted to keep her safe from Hank Carter and from the world's cruel eyes, he would have to do something far bigger. He would have to give her his name. And he would have to do it for a reason no one in Dusty Creek would ever guess when they heard the news. The news hit Dusty Creek like a summer storm. By noon the next day, folks were already talking. Someone saw Clayton Hayes ride into town in his best black coat. Someone else saw Sarah Carter step out of the dressmaker's shop in a clean blue dress she had not worn since her wedding to Luke. By evening, every tongue in town said the same thing. The richest rancher in 3 counties had gone into the small white church on the hill with the beaten widow on his arm. They said he was crazy. They said he only wanted to own more land. They said he had finally gone soft in the head, throwing his good name away on a woman with trouble tied to her like a rope. No one guessed the real reason. Not the preacher who wiped his brow while he read the vows. Not the old ladies who watched from the last pew with lips pressed tight. Not the ranch hands who stood in the back in their dusty boots, staring in surprise. Not even Sarah. Her hands shook as she held the small bunch of wildflowers that one of the ranch hands' wives had hurriedly cut from her yard. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She felt like she was watching someone else, another woman, walking down that short wooden aisle toward the man in the black coat. Clayton stood straight, his hat off, his dark hair neat for once. His face was calm, but his eyes were not. There was a storm in them. When the preacher asked if she took this man to be her husband, Sarah's throat closed for a second. Then she thought of Hank's hand on her arm. She thought of long nights listening for hoofbeats, afraid every sound in the dark was them returning. She thought of waking each morning and touching bruises that did not belong to any accident. She lifted her chin. "I do," she said. When the preacher asked Clayton the same question, the church was so quiet you could hear the creak of the wooden floor. Clayton answered in a low, steady voice, "I do." The preacher spoke his final words. He joined their hands. He told Clayton he could kiss his bride. Clayton did not step in close. He lifted Sarah's hand and pressed his lips to her fingers instead, gentle and careful. For the first time that day, a warm flush rose in her cheeks that had nothing to do with shame. Outside, the town watched them step into the sunlight. No band played, no feast waited. There were a few stiff nods, a couple of short handshakes. Most people just stared. Near the edge of the road, Hank Carter leaned against a post, arms crossed, face hard. Jesse stood beside him, eyes darting from his brother to the new couple. "Well now, Hank drawled as Clayton helped Sarah into the wagon. "Isn't this sweet?" Clayton turned slowly. "You got something to say?" Hank took a step close, but not too close. "You think a wedding ring changes anything?" he said. "You think hiding her out on your fancy ranch means nobody remembers who she is? What she owes?" "She owes you nothing," Clayton said. "You took your money yesterday." That was the last of it. Hank's smile twisted. "Everyone knows you married her for the land," he said loudly so the folks nearby could hear. "Or maybe for other reasons. Maybe the rich rancher just got lonely." Some men chuckled under their breath. Others looked away. Clayton's jaw tightened, but he did not rise to the bait. He stepped up into the wagon and took the reins. Before he shook them, he looked down at Hank one last time. "You will stay away from my wife," he said. "That is the last warning you get." The word wife hung in the air. Hank's eyes burned. For a moment, Sarah thought he might draw his gun right there in front of the church. But too many eyes were on them, and Hank liked to pick his moments. He spit in the dirt instead. "Ride on, Hayes," he said. "This is not finished." Clayton flicked the reins. The wagon rolled forward. As they left the town behind, Sarah sat stiff beside him, one hand curled around the edge of the seat. The ring on her finger felt strange and heavy, a circle of metal that changed everything and nothing at the same time. "Why did you do it?" she asked at last, her voice barely above the rattle of the wheels. "Really? Do not say it was just to protect me. You could have hired a guard. You could have scared them off and gone home." Clayton did not answer right away. The open land spread out before them, wide and brown and endless. A hawk circled high overhead. "I was not always the man you see now," he said finally. "There was a time when I was mean, quick to drink, quick to anger. I did things I cannot forget, things I will answer for when I meet my Maker." Sarah turned her head slowly. "You hurt someone," she said. He nodded once. "A woman, years ago. I was younger, angry at the world. She said something small, and I came home drunk from town. I raised my hand and struck her. One time. That was all it took." His voice thickened for a moment. "She left the next morning. I never saw her again. I sent money when I found out where she had gone. I worked harder, bought land, grew this ranch from nothing. People look at me now and see a rich man, but I know what I am capable of if I am not careful." Sarah stared at his strong hands holding the reins, the same hands that had fixed her door, mended her fence, lifted her fallen flower. "Since that night," he went on, "I told myself I would do what I could to make it right with the world, to protect those who could not protect themselves. But it always felt like trying to fill a dry river with a cup." He finally looked at her. His eyes were raw, stripped of his usual calm. "When I saw you in that street," he said, "with their marks on your face, shaking while everyone turned away, I saw her, the woman I wronged. I saw what can happen when men like Hank go unchecked. I knew money would not be enough. I knew the only way to truly stand between you and them was to make you my family." He turned his gaze back to the road. "I did not marry you because I wanted thanks, or because I thought you would fall in love with me. I married you because I could not bear to walk away and leave you to them. I married you because I needed to know that this time, when it mattered, I did not turn my back." Silence settled between them. The wagon rattled over a small rut. Sarah's heart felt twisted. No one in town knew this. No one could have guessed. They thought he wanted her land, or her body, or to play the hero. He had married her to fight his own ghosts. "Do you regret it yet?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "No," he said. "But you should know something, Sarah. If at any time after this danger passes you wish to leave, I will not hold you. The house on my ranch will be yours. You will have money, a name, and a place where no one can ever claim you owe them for breathing their air. You will owe me nothing." She looked at him for a long time. At the man who confessed his worst sin instead of hiding it. At the man who stood in front of her house when 3 riders came. At the man who just gave her a way out even while he drove her toward his home. Her eyes stung. "You say you are capable of great harm," she said. "Maybe you are. but I have only seen you stand in the way of it." The sun was low when Hayes Ranch came into view. Wide green fields spread like a promise. Cattle grazed under the open sky. White fences lined the hills. A big house stood on a rise, strong and solid, smoke curling from its chimney. Clayton's foreman, a broad man named Roy, walked out to meet the wagon, wiping his hands on a rag. The bunkhouse doors opened, and the hands stepped out, curious. "Boys," Roy called, a slow smile breaking across his face. "Looks like the boss brought home a wife." A cheer went up, rough and surprised, but not unkind. Some tipped their hats. One of the younger hands let out a whistle before an older one elbowed him quiet. Clayton climbed down and turned to Sarah, holding out his hand. She looked at the ranch, at the men, at the wide sky that did not press in on her like the walls of her small, broken house. Her fear was still there, but it was not the same fear as before. It did not own her. She placed her hand in his and stepped down. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hayes," Roy said, tipping his hat with a grin. The name hit her like a wave. For a second she swayed. Clayton's hand steadied her. Home. That night, after the hands ate and the lamps were lit, Clayton stood on his porch again. Sarah stood beside him this time, wrapped in a shawl, looking out over the land. The stars burned bright and clear above them. "They will come again, you know," she said. "Hank and Jesse. Men like that, do not forget." Clayton nodded. "Then they will find this place is not like that small house by the road," he said. "They will find a gate they cannot push through, and a woman who is no longer alone." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Clayton," she said, "I did not marry you for love. I married you because I was tired of being afraid and tired of being beaten for debts I did not owe. But I see you. I see what you carry. Maybe one day, if we both keep trying, this house can be more than a shield. Maybe it can be a place where the past does not rule every step we take." He turned his head. Their eyes met in the lamplight. "I would like that," he said. In the months that followed, Hank Carter did come back once, with drink in his blood and rage in his eyes. He found a gate guarded by armed men loyal to Clayton Hayes, and a line he could not cross without paying a price. He turned away, cursing, and the dust swallowed him. People in Dusty Creek kept talking. They called Sarah lucky, they called Clayton foolish, but when she rode into town now, no one looked away. They tipped their hats and said her new name, some with respect, some with envy. As for the truth, the real reason the rich rancher married the widow no one had protected, that lived between the two of them, in quiet talks on the porch and small, careful smiles across the dinner table. He had married her to make sure no man ever raised a hand to her again. In time, to his own surprise and to hers, he stayed because his heart had finally found the one place it could lay down its weapons and rest.